Hi friends, so you may have seen that image of Obama with Greta Thunberg. If you're not familiar with Greta Thunberg, she is a very young woman. She's about 17 now, but she started going, I think she's about 16 or 17. She started camping outside the Swedish Parliament every Friday or something, every week, month after month, to protest against the climate crisis and the lack of action by governments. And that was a good thing to do, of course, and she's become quite famous in a way through, there's been invitations to the UK Parliament to speak and all that kind of thing, which I find a bit of a worry. And then I find it a worry because when people start being invited to speak at Parliament, and these people in Parliament, these UK politicians, they know what they're not doing and what they should be doing. They don't need a young woman to be telling them what they need to do. And she's no fool either. She knows that they know what they need to be doing and they're not doing it. So it's this weird thing, of them inviting her and sort of, clapping and patronizing her and saying, good, well done, and all this sort of thing, when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. That is seriously addressing climate change, or the climate crisis. We should be calling it that. It's not change anymore. It's a crisis and emergency. And she knows that they're not going to do anything either, which makes it all sort of more weird in a way, because it's true, they're not going to do anything. In fact, they're going the other way. In the United States, they're going the other way with the Trump administration, and I've done some recent videos about that. One of the most recent ones was that the attorneys for the Trump administration were arguing against these school children that had want to bring a trial against the Trump administration, basically for inaction on climate change. And the attorneys for that in that trial argued that humans don't have a right to a livable planet, basically a livable environment. That's such an interesting take on it. And the other one that I did just recently was about the methane increase. The permafrosts are melting 70 years earlier than expected in Canada, and that is a dire, dire thing. It's dire. When things like that start happening, I find that really frightening. I knew it was bad, and as I said, that is really frightening, 70 years earlier than expected. And you can look up why, if you don't understand why that is so dire, so dire, look up methane and how powerful a greenhouse gas it is, and how much methane is below the surface of the East Siberian Arctic shelf and all those other places, and underneath the ocean bed and all that kind of thing. And if that comes up, even if 1% of the East Siberian Arctic shelf methane came to the surface due to warming, it would be all over for everybody. So anyway, those things. But so Greta Thunberg, I don't know how much she knows, but she seems to know a fair bit. And I find that really sad that somebody so young, because she started when she was, I think, 15 years old, realizing that, she got very depressed for a year, and she realized that, there's really almost no hope actually for her and for her friends and her family and all of that on this planet, because things are already in motion, but she's doing what she can. So good on her. Because a lot of people aren't doing anything except wringing their hands. So that's a really good thing, and that's that's her nonviolent protest. Then I see her with President Obama, and this very strange pose, where he's looking down at her and looking all concerned, and she's looking she's looking down at the ground, and it's a really kind of I can see that the photographers, it's all part of the propaganda by the Democratic Party and by those that have been associated with it, to put forward the idea that they are the party that cares about the environment and that they will do something, when really the evidence, past actions are predictors of the future, and the evidence is that they have not done much at all and probably will not do much into the future. They'll just trim around the edges and pay lip service to it and probably complain that they can't do it because of the GOP and all this. I'm talking about the United States now. So I feel like this is just they're either Greta Thunberg's handlers or her father, I think, is either completely clueless and doesn't realize what's going on, doesn't realize that people like Obama and the like and these politicians are really just exploiting and pimping her to up the profile of their party as that they're going to do something about the climate crisis. Also, it's a way of this happens again and again where political figures will try and co-opt somebody who seems to be actually getting a groundswell of attention, a groundswell movement, a grassroots movement. They'll move in and try and co-opt that person, and also try and make it so that that person does not want to criticize these powerful figures. It's sort of like, you know, the lure of a sort of fame and glamour and all that sort and power, you know, that that they kind of use on people. So, you know, it happens all over the place. You know, green groups are co-opted by the animal industry. So-called animal rights groups are co-opted by the animal welfare departments in industry. And they start promoting happy animal products and happy animal slavery instead of promoting veganism, which, you know, will end all this terrible suffering and death of animals. You know, if you watch Cowspiracy, you see that the different green groups they get funding from some industries. You know, if it's not animal industries, it's some other industry that is trying basically to co-opt those groups so that they don't cause any trouble and don't impact their profits. So we see this all the time. So this thing with Greta Thunberg, you know, even though she is sort of a wake-up to that politicians aren't going to do anything in some ways, and that they're just, you know, their words, they're just placating people and trying to give the impression that they want to do something. You know, she's a wake-up to it, but at the same time, I sort of wonder why she basically entertains the enemy, because that's what Obama is. That's what all those politicians are, really. They don't need, you know, a 16 or 17-year-old young woman to tell them what they need to do. They know exactly what they need to do, what they should be doing, what they should have been doing all along, but they have no impetus to do that, no motivation to do it, because as that saying goes, now I can't recall it completely, but I mean, you know, if somebody's, you know, profits rely on not knowing something, then they're going to not know it. They're going to sort of ignore it, basically, or they're going to try and stop. You know, it's in their interest not to acknowledge it. So, you know, when I saw this image of Obama looking very concerned and stuff, and I thought, well, this is funny, because after he left office, he was joking with his Wall Street pals, and he was saying, you know, stop complaining, just say thank you. You know, I increased your shares market value, I increased, you know, your profits and all of that. So just say thank you, you know, and he's laughing about it. You can find that video online of him, and you know, he got payback later when, you know, I think it was Wall Street or paid him $800,000 or something for some speech. This is like payback after the fact, that kind of thing. You know, it's so for somebody who is completely in cahoots with Wall Street and all of that, to be posing with this young woman, Greta Thunberg, who has been criticizing politicians openly and regularly, it does not look good. The optics don't look good. It looks like, you know, it just looks like another one of many, many decades worth of political figures co-opting people so that they don't cause trouble, and also giving the optics of what the Democratic Party likes to do, which is put forward this false notion that they're the party of diversity and that they care about the people, and that they care about poor people and all this sort of stuff, and that they care about the environment, when really in actuality, they really do very little, and particularly when it comes to addressing social inequality, homelessness, and all that sort of thing. And I would rather have somebody from the GOP win than allow anybody who is remotely progressive win any of the states, the state elections, or even the highest office of President of the United States. That's the sad truth. So, can you hear those parrots in the background? We have these black parrots that fly over, and they every so often, and they eat pine cones, and they're incredibly noisy. They're black parrots. It's really funny. Anyway, so I don't think I think Greta Thunberg is probably intelligent enough to be she's still young, you know, like she's a young person. So I don't know. Maybe she's just not savvy enough or cynical enough to realize what's going on when you see things like Obama posing with her with a photo that looks incredibly contemplative, and thoughtful and concerned and all of that. You know, when I saw her with that particular political figure, I thought, wow, they must be feeling like they can really, really exploit her, and they can also try and quell this rising sort of the youth that are protesting in the streets. You know, she's organized, you know, globally there's been school strikes, children going out on strike because they basically don't want to die early from starvation and stuff. And who of us do? Even though there are people right now dying of starvation in Yemen because of Western imperialism supporting the brutal Saudi monarchy in their genocide in Yemen. I mean, people have been starving for a very long time and suffering because of Western imperialism. Now Westerners are freaking out because it's all coming around to us when we should all have been doing something about this inequality and war and all of that way before. It's sad that some of us only act when we're threatened. Of course, in my view, it's too late, you know, particularly when I read things like the permafrost melting 70 years earlier than expected. That is so scary. But anyway, about Greta Thunberg, I hope that she's savvy enough to realize what's happening and what the Democratic Party is trying to do and what other politicians are trying to do when they pose with her and stuff. It's all about exploiting her and also getting on board her following to give the impression that they care about the future of our species or the planet, when really things will just go along business as usual with some trimmings around the edges and some insignificant changes. And in the case of, say Donald Trump just going the other way and undoing all environmental protections that he is doing, and seeing melting Arctic ice as some sort of business opportunity, which a lot of businesses are seeing. I mean, this is the insanity. The insanity of this planet is that we're literally heading for extinction, and we're in the 6th mass extinction, and we're on the front lines. And here are these people seeing the Arctic melting as a business opportunity. That's how insane it is. That's how insane it is. If that doesn't sum it all up right there, that capitalism is ecocide. Capitalism is inextricably linked with imperialism, and end-stage capitalism that's where we are. And as Chris Hedges said, if we don't break this machine, they're going to kill us. I'm not even sure if breaking the machine at this point would make any difference, but we can certainly try. But that requires nonviolent civil disobedience, and that's what's required now. But I don't know if we as a species can organize ourselves anymore. I don't really think we're capable of organizing ourselves. And I think by the time people realize, when they get out from behind their devices watching the cute cat videos and stuff, and basically agriculture is on the brink of collapse, then they might start freaking out. And when they're starting to find it very difficult to get food, and that's coming, then maybe they'll start freaking out, and then it'll be just chaos. It'll be a complete social breakdown. I'm hoping that it doesn't have to get to that point where people sort of wake up and start doing something. Because even though I might think it's too late, I still continue doing things every day. And particularly in relation to trying to get people to go vegan, because one, animals are not our property, they're sentient beings, and we don't have a right to use them. And two, that's the most important reason to go vegan. And two, because basically animal agriculture is one of the major drivers of the climate crisis. I'm going to show you those memes again. From the largest study to date, 114 countries, 40,000 farms, 90% of all the food we eat from farm to fork. And the conclusion from that largest study to date is that adopting a plant-based diet is the single most important thing we can do, not only to address the climate crisis, but eutrophication, acidification of the oceans, and all of that. It's much better than driving an electric car or any of that sort of thing. Way, way, way better. Let's hope that people like Greta Thunberg is not too young to realize what's happening, why these politicians are being so friendly to her, and why they're using her in images, like photos like the one I showed you. And because only a non-violent grassroots movement at this point, and non-violent civil disobedience is really going to stop this. I'm quite convinced of that, really. I just don't feel like politicians can even organize themselves out of this mess. They're too worried about their careers. Most politicians that are attracted to power are milquetoast or they're, psychopaths. That's the sort of people we have in power. Psychopaths or people that have really no spine, no offense to invertebrates, but they have no moral spine, really. You see it over and over again. Look what's happening in Australia with all the politicians that are silent about Julian Assange. They're so worried about their career and they don't want to upset the United States because we're just a lackey of the United States. We just go along with their nonsense. So I don't see anything happening at all, really. I know I've been talking a lot about this lately, but that's because, one, my own government, we returned a right-wing government, Scott Morrison, and so nothing is going to happen in the next 3 years. And I can see Trump winning in the United States because the Democratic Party, like I say, they would rather a Republican win than have anybody who's remotely progressive, like, say, Bernie Sanders, that kind of person. And they did the last time they cheated him out of the primary, and I don't think he's going to make a fuss like he didn't make a fuss last time, and I don't see that happening either this time. And if Trump gets in again, well, even if we weren't already toast, we definitely would be after that. And so, I've decided, because it's sort of so sort of in some ways dire, and I don't sugarcoat things on this channel. I don't believe in filling people with false hope. I believe in action, though. I don't believe in rolling over and just waiting for the end. Like, I just keep on acting as if there is hope that things are going to right themselves or whatever. Short of a miracle, I don't think that's going to happen, particularly with our political climate the way it is, and with climate crisis out of control and run away. But I believe in continuing to do, to encourage people to go vegan, because right now that could stop 200. If everybody went vegan, 200 plus million animals, land animals, could be prevented from being tortured and killed every single day, and 4 times that amount of aquatic animals could be prevented from being tortured and killed. So that's no small potatoes, and all the other things that happen as a result of being vegan, that's not the only thing. That's the most important thing, but there are so many things, from that study, the largest study to date, that shows what a wonderful, a remarkable thing it would be if we all went vegan. But there's also, we need to completely change, have a vision for the future, and get rid of capitalism, because look where it's brought us. And it basically looks like it's going to take us all out. and then of course there's all the people that are affected by war from Western imperialism. That's really important to try and stop that. And of course, it could all be mutually assured destruction if we don't stop, for example, this war on Iran from the US empire. There are so many lives at stake. So no, I don't believe in just sitting on my hands or wringing my hands and just waiting for the end, or sort of, becoming completely nihilistic and completely self-involved. But what I do want to do more of, though, is being in the moment and cherishing what we have now, because at some point things are going to get kind of crazy. So, and we should all be doing that and being kinder to one another and being more just, and trying not to sweat the small stuff. Like, that's something that I've become more. I've become less interested in sweating the small stuff, and in relation to, and this is something that's happened over the last few years, but in relation to people, anybody who's been particularly awful to me in the past, well, it really doesn't matter anymore. It's like it doesn't mean anything to me anymore, really. And in fact, I have good thoughts for those people, because we're all going to, life is short, and it really is. And I very much doubt that I'll be able to, at this point, going by what's happening with the climate crisis, if short of a miracle, I don't think that I'll be actually living out my natural life. We make jokes here that, we try and eat sort of healthy and, not abuse ourselves with, with sort of eating crap food and stuff. Being vegan, you can, even when you're eating naughty food, it's still in some ways better than the food that has animal products in it. But we try and eat fairly healthy, and I say, oh, good, we must make sure we're healthy so that we can be around for our imminent extinction, for when the extinction happens, the catastrophe. And we have some black humor about that, because you've got to keep a sense of humor, really. So that's what we can take from some of these dire predictions, is just to sort of like try and be more in the moment, and try and just appreciate the beauty that we have and the love that we have for people, and try and do things for people, particularly people that don't even know that we've done something good for them. Sort of do things anonymously, try and just make this world a kinder place and a more just place. That's what we can do, and just try and be in the moment and really, really pay attention to the beauty that we have right now that may not be here in, say, 30 years' time or 40 years' time. And all the non-human animals that are around us, try and be vegan and respect them. So that's what I take from this, really. And I don't even look anymore at the environmental news unless it's sort of somebody happens to bring it to my attention, because I can't stand it. It's just so sad what we're doing. It's just so insane and just a catastrophe. Every single day there's some catastrophic news, and I just don't want to see it anymore. It's too awful. It's too disturbing, and so I'd rather just try and do what I can to mitigate the impending disaster, sort of in some way, and that means going vegan and all the other things that I talked about. And I hope that you'll join me in that, and just try and get into meditation, all that kind of thing. It's all good things that can try and keep us on an even keel when everything gets more and more insane, which it appears to be doing. Okay, well, thanks so much for watching. If you like the content on this channel, please hit the subscribe button and click the notifications bell, otherwise you don't receive notifications when I drop a video. Please hit the like button and leave comments. I always appreciate your comments. It's great to have some engagement. And sometimes I wonder, if things are so dire, why am I doing this? But this is part of a sort of a catharsis for me to do this. And also I'm hoping that somebody will go vegan over these videos, and that maybe there might be something And also there's a sort of a solidarity in it too. You know, if you care about what's going on, and I'm sure a lot of you do, then it probably is some sort of comfort to know somebody else does, and that's part of that too, is a sort of like a kind of a community thing. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vegan. And by the way, please join me on Instagram. I'm being more active on Instagram now, although it's not quite like this, but it's sort of similar in a way. I do, you know, the small videos and whatever. So if you're on Instagram, just look for @VeganTrove on Instagram. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Till next time, bye for now.
My name is Greta Thunberg. I am 15 years old and I'm from Sweden. I speak on behalf of climate justice now. Many people say that Sweden is just a small country and it doesn't matter what we do. But I've learned that you are never too small to make a difference. And if a few children can get headlines all over the world just by not going to school, then imagine what we could all do together if we really wanted to. But to do that, we have to speak clearly, no matter how uncomfortable that may be. You only speak of green, eternal economic growth because you are too scared of being unpopular. You only talk about moving forward with the same bad ideas that got us into this mess, even when the only sensible thing to do is pull the emergency brake. You are not mature enough to tell it like it is. Even that burden you leave to us children. But I don't care about being popular. I care about climate justice and a living planet. Our civilization is being sacrificed for the opportunity of a very small number of people to continue making enormous amounts of money. Our biosphere is being sacrificed so that rich people in countries like mine can live in luxury. It is the sufferings of the many which pay for the luxuries of the few. The year 2078, I will celebrate my 75th birthday. If I have children, maybe they will spend that day with me. Maybe they will ask me about you. Maybe they will ask why you didn't do anything while there still was time to act. You say you love your children above all else, and yet you are stealing their future in front of their very eyes. Until you start focusing on what needs to be done rather than what is politically possible, there is no hope. We cannot solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis. We need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground, and we need to focus on equity. And if solutions within this system are so impossible to find, then maybe we should change the system itself. We have not come here to beg world leaders to care. You have ignored us in the past, and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses, and we are running out of time. We have come here to let you know that change is coming, whether you like it or not. The real power belongs to the people. Thank you.